TO Blaze.
Hey there, this is Tio bringing another Kerbal Space Program video. This is video 6 of my Astrophobia Career Mode playthrough. So, my last video, launched my science station around Kerbin, made my little orbiter style plane, and got some basic science into the mobile processing lab parked outside the KSC. So now it's time to put some serious science points into that thing so the scientists can convert it and process it. So I'm gonna just go ahead and send my Mun lander back out to the Mun. Made a couple basic modifications, but this design has worked already for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use the basic same thing. This one's not gonna be reusable, and at some point I'm gonna want to work up to a better reusable design where I can really make use of the station parked outside of just at in low Kerbin orbit. So not a very efficient burn into orbit around Kerbin, but gets the job done. This is kind of how I used to actually fly. Really steep at first. Get my apoapsis a little too high too early. Then you end up slowing down as you coast up to that altitude. But got plenty of fuel in these boosters, so gotta have some fuel left in my core stage for my transfer burn. So not too concerned. And also probably gonna go to the Mun real quick and set up my relay network. I've got my satellites all parked out there. I haven't actually set up the network correctly. So yeah, I'm going to leave my lander in low Kerbin orbit and let's go finish setting up our relay network around the Mun. I've got a video on my channel that explains how to set up relay networks. It's better to send them up in a single launch. All of the satellites usually go with 3 in a single launch, but in this case I sent them up individually, so it's not going to be the same steps, but typically I'll select one of the satellites and match inclination with the other 2 to that one. So ideally, the first satellite that I release, or actually the whole network, if I'm launching it in a single vehicle, it's going to be perfectly aligned with the inclination of the planet. So it's not going to have it's going to have a 0-degree inclination. It's not going to it's going to pass right over the equator constantly. But so long as all of your relay satellites match their inclination, I don't think it's going to be an issue because you want their orbital periods to be the exact same. Otherwise, they'll start to drift. But yeah, I'm just kind of eyeballing their position. I can't really measure to make sure they're all exactly 120 degrees from each other. But once I've got their inclination matched, I take 1 point of the orbits and have them match precisely, and then I just raise or lower my orbit depending on if I need to get a little further or a little closer to the next satellite. And I do that for the first 2, try to get them 120 degrees from each other, and then I'll do it for the third one finally, and then they'll all be evenly spaced, or pretty close anyway. But yeah, when you're designing satellites like this, if you're going to send them up in separate launches, well then you can make them look however you want. They don't have to all be the exact same. It's fun to make satellites in KSP. You can put blinking lights on them. You can add struts and structural pieces and all kinds of stuff. Main thing to consider is make sure you have the right antenna. Make sure you got enough battery power to go through the dark period of the orbit where you're not getting any sunlight, and also make sure you got the right amount of thrust in whatever engine you choose. It's usually good to have an oversized one and something really small that you can dial in your orbit, because you want all of your orbits of all of your satellites in the network to match exactly, and it can be hard to achieve that if you're burning a really high thrust engine like sometimes even something like a Terrier is a little too much for dialing in your orbits exactly. So in these, I think I've got a little ant engine, like one of the smallest engines in the game, and even that thing I dial it down to like 1% thrust. The RCS thrusters can be really good for this too. You can also adjust the thrust output on those. So that's about it. I'm just kind of having fun, just doing it manually, um, doing it with a little bit of trial and error. I guess if you're good at math, you could probably figure out how to get them all 120 degrees apart using the apoapsis and periapsis. But I'm just not here for that. So just trying to get it close enough. If your orbit is high enough, you'll stay in line of sight constantly, so you can afford to not be exactly 120 degrees from each other. And there should never be a point where you lose connection back to Kerbin. So that's about it. Wrapping up my network. Typically, when I finish a network, I'll all my engines are shut off on the satellites, and I pretty much never go back to those satellites and use them for anything ever again. I want them to just stay parked at that nice orbit. I don't want to accidentally uh, throttle them up and move them or anything like that. So I don't put any science experiments on them usually. Like I have no reason to ever go back and take command of that satellite. It needs to just stay where it's at, doing its thing. If I if I have a contract to transmit science from the orbit of something, I have other probes for that purpose, or like a science station or something with actual Kerbinauts, but not in this playthrough. So just finishing my last satellite there. You can see how tedious that work can be, even at 4 times normal speed. So just gonna run back to see if I can get any contracts. This is the part of the career playthrough where usually you get contracts to build surface stations or orbital stations, but I know that this playthrough is going to be a little different because I'm not progressing the same. Usually, I think the progression is kind of linear, and so once you like actually get a Kerbal into orbit and you plant a flag and so forth, I think the career mode starts giving you incrementally more challenging contracts, which it is. It's giving me some contracts, but it's also not giving me some that I'm used to seeing. So let's go back and grab our Munlander. Look at those orbits, how nice and pretty they are. Look at how evenly spaced those relays are. Good stuff. Good soup. Around the Mun, around Minimus, and around Kerbin, those aren't so nice, but they're not evenly spaced. But let's get our Munlander with that core stage, still with 30-40% fuel in it. Let's get this bad boy to the Mun. Sometimes I'll make a maneuver node just to make sure I'm leaving Kerbin at the right time. But once you've been to the Mun a couple dozen times, it can get to be pretty easy. So don't always need a maneuver node. I'm just doing it for the sake of it here. But I'll cancel my maneuver here in a second, and I'll just finish burning in map mode. You can kind of dial in your periapsis nice and low. In this case, 30,000 meters is a good target. And then I'm going to circularize when I get to the Mun. There you see I've got connectivity back to the KSC. Got all my bars. I forgot to extend my antenna, I think. So now once my antenna is extended, got full connectivity. Not worried about getting in any blackout zones where I can't get back to Kerbin with my signal. So running some experiments, loading them into the experiment storage unit. I'm going to go ahead and save my Science Junior and my Mystery Goo for when I actually touch down on the surface though. And the plan is to just collect all this stuff and bring it back to the KSC and load it into my mobile processing lab. So there you see I was trying to transmit some things, but there really is no point in transmitting right now. It's going to burn a lot of electricity, and I'm going to give full credit for bringing it back to the KSC anyway. One reason to transmit, I suppose, is I'm not instantly getting these science points. I'm going to get them much later in the game when they've been processed in the lab. So if I were being thorough, it'd be kind of challenging without a Kerbinaut. I could run the experiments once and save them or transmit them, and then run them a second time for bringing them back to the surface. But I don't really think there's a good way to manage that. Usually, with a scientist, the Kerbinaut, you can actually grab the experiments with the Kerbal. You can do an EVA and grab the experiments and load them into the science module. You can right-click on the probe core and have it select and have it gather all science. It's like tricks you could use, but to like separate experiments, like this batch goes back to Kerbin, this batch goes to the mobile plant processing lab. There's no way to do that I can think of with a single vehicle right now. So that could be a reason in the future for future missions to transmit as much as possible, because everything else that's going back to Kerbin is going to the processing lab, and I'm not going to get credit for it for a while. Because that's how the processing lab works. You got to have lots and lots of time in the game, like in Kerbal years, for the scientists to process the experiments and convert them into ultimately more science points, but not instantaneous. So here you see I'm being greedy, trying to use my transfer stage to land on the Mun and maybe do some hopping from one biome to another, but decided against that. So let me try again, and this time I'll detach that transfer stage and land properly this time. I'm also going to try not to land in the craters. If I can land on flat ground, I'm going to have a better chance of not tipping over like that. So there you go. Stage my transfer stage. Let it crash into the surface and then slow down. I like to touch down at less than 5 meters per second if I can, and boop, hit my little action key and get all my experiments run. And I'm taking off in the wrong direction. I want to orbit in the same direction as the rotation of the moon, of the Mun in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and revert back to being on the surface. It's not a huge issue. Technically, I could have made it work and could have done a transfer back to Kerbin, but it's easier if you're going in a correct direction to do that transfer burn. So I'm going to touch down again. I guess I didn't do a quick save on the surface, so not a huge deal. It's relatively easy to land. Running all the experiments, take off again. So technically, I don't need all the fuel that I've got. I could detach my little probe at the tip of the lander, and all that's in that little probe is what needs to go back to Kerbin. Everything else can stay behind, kind of like the Apollo missions where they left the bottom stage of the lander. But I've got all the fuel, so might as well put all this stuff back in orbit around the Mun, and now let's do our transfer burn back to Kerbin. So I wish I could figure out a way to plan my transfer burn so that I re-entered Kerbin's atmosphere at their exact spot and timing that I wanted to splash down off the coast of the KSC, but I have no idea how to plan that, so I just get to Kerbin and circularize my orbit, and then re-enter more precisely once I'm circularized. It'd be kind of cool if there was a transfer planner that lets you pinpoint landing zones and stuff from that far out, but I imagine there's quite a bit of math that goes into that. So here I had a brain fart. Was thinking, let me experiment and dock this lander with my science station. Now, I put a station into orbit around Kerbin earlier, and the intent is to dock with that station with these reusable landers. Well, this one's not reusable, but I thought it would still be a good experiment. But I forgot the docking port on the station is the medium size, and this lander's got the tiny docking port. So wasting all this time aligning my inclination with the station and planning a rendezvous, but got plenty of fuel in this design at least, so I know I can do it in the future. I'll be able to send my reusable lander here, be able to dock with the station, drop off my science, refuel, and then go back to the Mun. There you see, there's my station. If my docking port was the right size, we'd be in business, but no big deal. I've got parachutes on this little probe anyway, so here I am realizing my mistake and also realizing I'm in the right spot anyway. I'm just going to burn there. I'm just making sure I'm not going to accidentally burn into the station, but nope, I'm going to burn retrograde. Let's drop my orbit as sharply as I can. I've got a heat shield on this thing, so I'm not worried about coming in fast. Plus, I slowed down an awful lot when I circularized earlier anyway, so I'm not too worried about heat. But I've already tested out my little airplane, so I know that so long as I land relatively close to the KSC with this probe, I'll be able to go out and get the science points and bring them back to the mobile processing lab. But Couldn't have planned this better if I had tried. I'm not going to actually hit the KSC, but I might land in the grasslands right next to it, which would have been ideal. I mean, you probably wouldn't want your vehicle to land in the KSC, not from orbit, in case something goes wrong, right? So, nice little landing zone here. Boop, touchdown. So, let's jump to Valentina. She's parked next to the mobile processing lab in her plane. Go ahead and start up the engines. She's got her own little private runway right here. And she's going to go out and get our science points out of the probe. I think there's lots of fun ways that I can try to do this in the future. This was a close enough distance that I probably could have used a Jeep if I had enough parts unlocked. I don't have any of the good wheels or some of the structural parts I would like, so here I am using a plane, which is not so easy to land. There you see I'm deciding that my speed and the inclination on that hill just weren't right, so I'm going to make another pass, trying to be patient. And I managed to do all this in one take. Didn't have to revert or anything, which is nice. But gonna go ahead and kind of coast the rest of the way there. Not going too fast. 20 or 30 meters per second is pretty fast. So go ahead and hit my brakes when I get close enough, and she can hop out. And Valentina's gonna go and grab the experiments out of the little storage unit on the top there and load it into the front of the plane. So I wish I had better luck designing helicopters. I've gotten a couple designs to work in other playthroughs, but once I got more parts unlocked here, I may bite the bullet and try to get an air-breathing engine type helicopter to work. I can get the electric motors to work, but I haven't had any luck with the engines, which probably would be more efficient and have more thrust. But for now, I got the plane. Plane works fine, I guess. Be nice to use a helicopter to land right next to it, and helicopters are pretty fun to fly. But we can get Valentina back to the mobile processing lab. She can park, put all the science in there. And like I said, they're going to convert that over months and years of in-game time and convert that to even more science points to unlock more and more technology, which is going to be nice. So, video's about done. Hope you're enjoying the playthrough. I know I'm definitely enjoying this different way of doing things, having these restrictions, not being able to go up to orbit with the Kerbinauts. It's creating some unique challenges and it's making the game a little more fun. So if you like the video, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment if you want to see something a little different in the future. I appreciate you tuning in. I've got another video in the series lined up, and I will see you again very soon.